Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the Illinois Legislative Review. During this review, we will go over some of the highlights from the past legislative session in Springfield. My name is Monica Steinyak, and I am a District Director for Representative Mary Beth Canty. Thank you to the Prospect Heights Library and its staff for securing a room for tonight's event. Thank you to the Prospect Heights Mayor, Patrick, bear with me, Ludwigson, for joining us at this event. We are also joined by Commissioner Britton, who will provide an overview of his role and responsibilities with Cook County government. Our main presenters are State Representative Mary Beth Canty of 54th District and Representative Tracy Katz-Mule of District 57. As a government office, please keep in mind that we cannot answer political or campaign-related questions, nor we can comment on ongoing litigation. Let's start. Commissioner?
No, stop. You're embarrassing me. Thank you. So I am Cook County Commissioner Scott Britton. I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank my very good friends, Rep. Canty and Rep. Katz-Mule. Also, Mayor Ludwigson, who is here from Prospect Heights. As I told the mayor, I've been here a lot recently. I might as well move in. I got to make sure to stay in my district, but that's all. And I'm going to, let me know if you can't hear me. I'm a trial lawyer. I do project. So I want to make sure that I hit all of this stuff, because I'm going to start off this discussion with what is usually my water cooler speech, which is, first off, I ask people, raise your hand if you know what the heck the Cook County Commissioner does. Don't really do it. Nobody does. So what I wanted to do was to give you a quick overview of what we do in the county and what I do as your commissioner, because I represent most of Prospect Heights and the surrounding areas. And then we're going to get into questions about end of session and the things that my friends do in Springfield. This is just a sense of the responsibilities that the county has within our governmental niche. That includes about half of our budget is the healthcare system. That's our 2 hospitals and 14 clinics. We do a lot with public safety. The sheriff's office is under my jurisdiction, the jail, the public defender, the state's attorney, all of that kind of stuff. We do a lot of roads and bridges, because a lot of stuff around here, infrastructure is county, as opposed to either municipality or state or federal. And my favorite part of the job, which is the forest preserve system, is under my jurisdiction. That's 70,000 acres of green space, including the Brookfield Zoo and the Botanic Garden, which is in my district. And my district, as you saw from the map, runs basically from the lake. We can go to the next slide, Monica. It goes from the lake to Inverness. So it's kind of like Idaho, turned on its side. 350,000 people, it's like half of a congressional district. That's it. That's the fight in 14th, where we are right now. Right, Barb? We're just over the border. And then this just shows you some of the things. I just had a big check this week that I presented to the city of Prospect Heights for over $500,000 that was given by the county for infrastructure improvements in this community, and that's the kind of stuff that we deliver with my district director, Barb Courtney, who's in the back. And so we do our best. The state's budget is $56-ish billion. Ours is over $10 billion. So it's it's a lot of your tax money. We should spend it wisely. You can go to the next slide. And this is just a sense of the things that we do and the myriad of things that we have related to county services. That includes PACE. You can go to the next slide. All of those kind of things. We do a lot of stuff with homeowner down payments, leak repair. We do a homeowner relief fund. All this assistance for those folks, particularly during COVID, who are really suffering, and we continue to do that today. You can go to the next slide. This is a big one. I have always said, as in my now 25 years as an elected official, I know. If you're going to work in our communities, you should be able to afford to live in our communities. And we do that through permanent supportive housing and affordable housing constantly as best we can. And just coming up soon, I think next week, we're going to open Poupard Place, which is in a supportive living community in Northbrook. We just opened one in Deerfield, and a tiny bit of Deerfield that's in Cook County. So we do a lot of those things as well to support people so they can live here when they work in our communities.
Supportive? What is that?
It
Is that
means
Section 8?
we'll take questions at the end. And I'm happy to talk to you afterwards, but I want to get to the reps. You can go to the next slide. These are a collection of the small business stuff that we did. A lot of this during COVID, a lot of businesses which were able to be saved by a lot of stuff that was done at the state and federal and local level, including Cook County, which gave out a lot of different grants, including 203 grants within the 14th district. You can go to the next one. We do a lot with our food pantries through our township governments. They're wonderful folks. I was a big supporter of the Guaranteed Income Promise pilot, which gave money to various people in order to support them during financial emergencies. We found out those people use that money to improve themselves, to take care of their kids, to go to college, to pay their medical bills. It's a wonderful program, and we're going to continue to do that as best we can with some headwinds that we're getting from the federal government. You guys know anything about that? Probably not. One of my proudest moments in the time 8 years I've been a Cook County Commissioner was our medical debt relief program. The state now has one as well. We're going to be able to retire. We've already retired almost $700,000 in medical debt with $9 million because we were able to pay pennies on the dollar to eliminate your debt, and then that goes away. You don't have to declare bankruptcy. By the time this is done, it'll be $1 billion that we'll be able to eliminate from people's burdens on their lives, and I think that's a great thing. Property taxes, everybody loves the property taxes, right? Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've had a little trouble getting our bills out on time. I know the mayor knows this, but we're doing better. I think it's going to go out more on time than before. But we now have a new bridge loan program, so our municipalities, which were really suffering, in particular our libraries, because they weren't getting the money that they were owed from the county, and we're doing better, but we're not there yet. We're going to be able to loan out this money, no interest. We'll pay the interest ourselves, the county will, because this is our responsibility. And we'll be able to do that with a lot more districts than in the past, because we're eliminating a lot of the limitations on what was going on with those folks based on their bond rating and other stuff. Can you go to the next one? This is, I guess, the one that I talk about the most, because this is my initiative, Cook County United Against Hate. A few years ago, I had anti-Semitic stuff dropped off in my driveway. It's not fun having Nazis in your driveway. It's also not fun to see people who would get this, my neighbors who are Jewish, thinking, what is this stuff? And feeling, obviously, attacked, justifiably so. And that includes everybody who is subject to, particularly marginalized groups who are continued to be discriminated against, bigotry, racism, and all that ugly stuff. We do now have over 90 coalition members. I think it'll be 100 by the time we're done. And the concept's an easy one. Hate against one is hate against all. Let's just keep ourselves civil. Let's just talk about our issues, even if we don't agree. But hate and violence, particularly against groups of any kind, is not acceptable here in the 14th, and it shouldn't be acceptable anywhere in the world. Go to the next slide. And I did that as quickly as I could, because we want to get to the questions with our friends from the state government, but I'm hanging around a lot. You'll see me out and about in the 14th district, and obviously come up anytime. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, along with Barb, who's my district director. And that is the county in 5 minutes. How about that?
We are going to move to the part when we have our wonderful state representatives to give us an oversight of what is happening within their districts. Big question, the bear in the room.
So I'll kick this one off. I'm Mary Beth Canty. I represent the 54th district. So for those of you who are not familiar, I have the eastern part of Palatine, the northern part of Arlington Heights, the western 51% of Prospect Heights, and then a touch, a flavor, a taste of Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, and Mount Prospect to try and create a little bit more of a rectangular shape. I also have the distinct honor of representing the property known as the Arlington Park property. It used to be a magnificent racetrack that was so fun, and you could take your kids there and spend hardly any money, but get a whole day's worth of entertainment outside in the sunshine. And now it is mostly a dirt field, so that is especially neat. And it was purchased a few years ago. Some of you may have heard of this organization, the Chicago Bears Football Club. They are a sports team. They play the National Football League, not to be confused with the football that is going on right now through the World Cup. Here are some things that I want to lay out. When Arlington Park and Churchill Downs decided that they would no longer operate a racetrack and they would sell their property, I was on the village board of Arlington Heights. That is where I live with my family. It became very clear that Churchill Downs wanted to sell their property to the Chicago Bears football club. It was also known for decades that the Bears wanted to locate there. It was not a surprise to anyone. And to put the property in perspective, it's about 326 acres. You can fit roughly 7 Soldier Fields plus parking on that property as is, with a little bit of room to walk around even. So it's the size of a small town within a whole community. This has been the topic of conversation since somewhere in 2021, 2022. I can hardly buy groceries without talking about the Chicago Bears and what they're going to do. And from the time I was on the village board, and I served from 2019 till 2023, I finished my term there and focused on being a state legislator full-time, I always had 2 questions, which was, 1, how are you moving the people around, right? It's a large property, it can hold a lot of people. It does not have great ingress and egress, which are really boring words for getting in and getting out of the property. It just doesn't. And my other question was, who's paying for this? Because I think we're really good communities out here in the northwest suburbs. I think we know our value, and I don't think that we need to be in a race to give away everything in order to attract businesses here. I think the lack of vacant land in our areas says a lot about businesses wanting to be here, families wanting to be here and stay here. I think that's a big deal. That being said, we also have an opportunity to create good economic development for the region if this gets done in the right way. And by that I mean proper studies, proper taxing, making sure that our schools, our municipalities, our libraries, our park districts, making sure that they aren't starved of tax revenue, as we see happen so often in TIF districts. How many of you are familiar with TIFs? Yes, and you love them, right? You think they're amazing, that's great. No? Okay, great. So we're on the same page. I do not like a TIF either. And I have heard feedback from some communities that say, you know, the management of the community will say, we love it and we do ours the right way. And we pay our school districts on a per pupil basis for every student generated by the TIF. Right, except they usually don't generate a lot of children, right? So you are taking away an opportunity for your school districts, your municipalities, your libraries, and everybody else to earn that little bit of extra property tax revenue from businesses that they then don't have to get from the human beings that are living in their community. So because I got asked that question a lot, I had to think about what would I want to see different, because legislators have tried for decades to change TIF. For some reason, it is the third rail. I do not know why TIF reform is so challenging to get over the finish line. But there are better ways of encouraging economic development and protecting your people than using a TIF. So I came up with a mega development project. Bear with me, this is going to be super boring, but it is worth knowing. If a community were to have a parcel of property or an area that they thought met criteria of being a mega development, and that would look different in various parts of the state, right? What we consider a mega development here in the northwest suburbs looks a lot different in Cairo, Illinois, in terms of the dollars invested and jobs created and everything else. But so if they thought they had a property that would generate that type of development, they could, if they so chose, create a mega development board. That board would consist of a representative from each of the taxing bodies within that property tax bill for the property at issue. And because some of you are like, well, I've read about TIFs and isn't that what they do already? And the answer is no, it is not what they do already. They have fake boards, fake joint review boards. So the people are invited, the taxing bodies are invited, but only one vote matters, the municipality. So your school districts can say, this is not a good move for us. Your library can say, this is not a good move for us. But if your municipality thinks it is good, they get to override everyone. So what we're creating in this new program would give each of those taxing bodies a weighted vote to any agreement that is developed with whoever is developing the property. They can set the special payment that that organization would end up paying, and that payment would be made in the normal course of business. So we all pay our property taxes twice a year, right? They would have to do the same instead of waiting until the end of 23 years or 40 years if it gets extended and crossing their fingers and hoping that there is surplus left in the TIF account to be spread out. They would get their revenues from those property taxes in real time. What does that look like potentially for the property of Arlington Park? When it was a fully operational racetrack, it generated $3 million a year in property taxes, and it generated about $850,000 a year in food and beverage tax, and that was split between the locals and the state. As a vacant dirt lot, it generates about $3.6 million a year in property taxes. If the community writ large was to agree that it was right for a mega development consideration, there is a discussion that the property taxes of 3.6 would get an additional set of incentive payment that, again, is going out to the taxing bodies, bringing that total payment, so the original property tax amount plus the special payment, to somewhere in the neighborhood of $8 to $12 million a year. And that's before any additional sales tax, occupancy tax, or anything else from the multi-use development is generated. And most of that is local dollars. That is going to our local school districts, it's going to our local municipalities, it's paying for infrastructure, right? That bill went through a negotiation within the House. A couple things were added to it in April, and as with all compromises, there are some parts that I did not love, right? But I recognize that moving the needle forward is better than doing nothing, and easing us away from TIF is better than holding on to this vestige of the past. The bill did pass in April and went over to the Senate, and it sat there. And it sat there, and it sat there, and it's still sitting there with a bow on it. But at 11 p.m. on May 31st, how many of you know when the last day of our spring session is? Anybody? Okay, I see a hand. So if you are guessing that it's May 31st, you are on the nose. If you thought it was later, you're totally wrong. I'm so sorry. May 31st, 11 p.m., a bill gets dropped by the Senate. That means language is filed for the first time, meaning it is usually one of the first times anyone sees it. And it basically recreates what Indiana did to their taxpayers when they passed their legislation to try and lure the bears over from Illinois. But I would argue a little bit worse, because it also creates at a municipal level a program that we already have, a sports facility authority. Illinois has one. It is still paying off debt from renovations to Soldier Field. It is still paying off debt for the White Sox, right? So, and that's with an identified funding source.
Yeah.
It gets 2% of all hotel and motel taxes in the city of Chicago just to pay down that debt, and it still does not cover everything. The bill that we got from the Senate did not even identify a revenue stream. What does that mean if your municipality wanted to be able to take advantage of this program? They are going to have to find a way to fund any bonding that they sent through that program. And the people that are easiest to get it from are you. That to me seems like a very, very, very bad deal to taxpayers. It seems like something that we should talk about longer than a few hours in the middle of the night on the last day of session. So that bill did not pass. It passed the Senate. It did not pass out of the House. Does that mean that we are automatically going to lose the Bears to Indiana? No, it doesn't. What it does mean, though, is that we take very seriously our duties to the people of Illinois and make sure that you are getting the economic development that you need, but that we are not robbing you blind in order to pay for it. So we've got a lot of folks that are Bears fans, and I know that, and I know that people sometimes are very excited about the Bears coming, but it's only good if it's a net benefit to the whole area. It's got to be something that is special and different and isn't going to come at a huge cost to taxpayers. And we're going to make sure that that is how we handle it. We will be methodical about this. I don't think it won't be like stick in the mud, right? We are open to feedback. But we will put the people of Illinois first, and I feel comfortable saying that for myself and for Tracy and for our colleagues. Because ultimately, you are the people that live here, you are the people that will stay here. So we answer to you, and we want to make sure that we're making decisions that are good. So I know there may be questions later about the Bears, but I wanted to level set kind of where we are. This story is not over. There is more to come, and before you ask it, there is no special session on the horizon. I just realized I should probably say that. And that is for a couple reasons. One, we do not have a bill that everybody has yet said they would agree to. And by that I mean the 60 representatives and the 30 senators and the one governor that would need to all say yes on any piece of legislation. And the only thing worse than calling a special session and paying us all to go and be there is if you do that and then we don't end up with anything. So it really does behoove us all to take the time that we need to have those conversations, get to a piece of legislation that we can agree on, and then convene when it's ready. That is the best thing for the people of Illinois. So now I can slide us into the very next and exciting topic, because I only talk about the most exciting things. So the first one is kind of related, right? We're talking about money, we're talking about property taxes and budgets. These are all really big things. The state budget this year is about $55.9 billion. Some might round up to 56, but who's counting?
Yeah,
right?
bill in here, bit in there, eventually talking about.
You know, who could say? But I think it's also important for us to talk a little bit about what that number means. So roughly 29 or 30% of it, so about 16.2 billion of those dollars are hard money. So that is money that is required to be paid either by law or by contract. The state cannot avoid paying for those things. And then the other 71%, or about $39.7 billion, most of it, 94% of that goes to 4 core services, being education, which goes all the way from pre-K through higher ed, healthcare, social services, and public safety. And so when we take all of that into account, there's a very, very small amount of money that is what we would call discretionary spending. And I want to take a step back too, because when you look at year-over-year spending. So what was last year's budget compared to this year's budget? We're up about 1.2% in spending. I don't know if any of you have heard about inflation. It is a thing that happens. It happens everywhere. But we are up in a dollar amount, roughly 1.2%. When you account for inflation, we are actually down in spending about 1.1% year over year, right? And if you go all the way back to fiscal year 2000 and you look at inflation over that time, we are actually down about $6.72 billion compared to what we were spending in the year 2000. I think it's important to know, right, as we're all suffering, we pay taxes here, we pay income taxes and property taxes and all those things. It is getting harder for everyone, and we are all trying to do more with less. It's happening to your municipal government, it is happening to you as individuals, it is happening to us as a state. And that is not getting better. So in, what was that, 2025, HR 1 passed, and it has an impact on our budget, right? So this is just flat numbers that we're looking at, but over the course of about 10 years, Illinois will lose roughly $5 billion a year or $52 billion a year over the course of 10 years of Medicaid funds. This means people going without basic health care. And let's talk a little bit about who those people are. So Medicaid is made up roughly 44% children. Medicaid covers about 50% of births across the state. 9% are seniors that are eligible for and receiving Medicaid. And Medicaid is the #1 payer of nursing facility days. They pay roughly 68%. So our seniors that are in need of care are predominantly funded through Medicaid. Another 7% is adults with disabilities. And about half of people receiving Medicaid also receive SNAP. And that impact also hits on our employment, right? So hospitals and health systems, they make up about 445,000 full-time jobs statewide. That is almost 11% of Illinois' total employment. So when you are taking $5 billion a year out of that system, that means people are going to lose their jobs, right? They are going to lose access to their health care. They are going to lose access to food. Then we've got the SNAP program, which is actually creating an added cost while putting less into the system. So the administrative add-ons that are going to be required will cost the state about $80 million a year just in employing people to verify work hours and all of these other things that we do fairly well on. We're not perfect by any stretch. But that's $80 million a year that we're paying for overhead and administration and not in helping individuals who need it the most. And so when I say we want to do what is right for the people of Illinois, that is true writ large. It is not just about the fancy things that we can do or the businesses that we can bring in. These are real things that we have to consider as we're making these really tough decisions. So we are doing what we can on an affordability cycle. I don't know what else to call it. We are looking for ways to cut junk fees from your lives by making it harder for companies to put those in place or to charge those. We have done our best to cut the automatic increase to the gas tax. So we are looking for every way we can find, looking under every couch cushion that we can find to try and make things easier for you, while at the same time recognizing that there are a lot of people who are going to lose their health care and we need to help them too. right? They are some of the most vulnerable among us. Some of you, I'm going to switch gears on you and talk a little bit about technology. I know some people are really excited about technology, and you're like, yes, AI, come, take me away, it's amazing. And some of you are not super excited. I am actually on the not excited camp, I gotta be honest. I have 2 young kids, and the AI is killing me, the technology is killing me. But it is something that exists, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. So we have a working group in the House. You're on it, right? Just kidding. Tracy's not on it. It's just me. I am a glutton for punishment.
Oh, and Rep, we do have a couple questions on
Then
this,
I'll
so
wait.
if we want to get to a quick
Let's do it.
to Tracy, and then we'll get to those
Yeah.
questions. Does that sound fair? Okay.
It does.
All right, gotcha. Rep Cat Small.
Oh, we bounced away from the slide that we were on just a second ago, because that's the other big topic that we were supposed to touch on, which is the build program. I should introduce myself. I'm State Rep Tracy Katz-Mall. Our district's kids right here in Prospect Heights. That's where we're neighbors. The 57th runs from Glencoe Beach on the lake, the southern sort of 60% of Glencoe plus a little bit of Wilmette and Winnetka. The heart of the district is in Northbrook, which is my hometown where I grew up. These are my folks who came tonight.
Yay.
Also parts of Glenview and Northfield, and then the western part of the district pops up into Lake County, catches places like Riverwoods and Lincolnshire, the majority of Wheeling, as well as parts of Prospect Heights, not Prospect, a little bit of unincorporated Arlington Heights, Des Plaines, a few other neighborhoods just for kicks. We have been at this, both of us now, for 3 budgets, which means we do a mix of things that are immediate actions we accomplished this year, and we'll share some of those today, but also these bigger long-range projects. Build was the ask that I had from the village to make sure that we talked about that other big ongoing project tonight. Build is the governor's initiative called Building Up Illinois Developments. We know we are several 100,000 units shy of what housing we should have here in Illinois. We need this for people at all income levels. We need it to keep people from migrating out of state, and we need it to be in the places where people want to live, work, and go to school. So the governor released a very big vision for how he saw that happening. Big vision, right? Big first offer. I'm going to outline a little bit what's in there. I know our municipal officials in the room are very familiar what's in there and what they feel good and not so good about, but for everybody else, just a little bit of overview. This is an effort to reform statewide zoning and building standards and timelines, which on its face sounds innocuous enough. The devil is in the details. The biggest and most commonly talked about element of this has to do with taking lots of a relatively small size and saying on them we can now build anything from a single family home to a duplex, a triplex, a cottage cluster, a set of townhomes, right? A lot of people when they first saw this bill said we don't even know what a cottage cluster is. But we're talking about basically properties right now that are single family zoned for one family going up to anywhere to 8 units, while the multiplying potential capacity of the state. The other component that is very interrelated in that had to do with accessory dwelling units, which some of you may have heard of. When I lived in the city, there was a coach house in our backyard. You could also have one that's attached. That's when you have a basement unit or an attic kind of unit that somebody could access through stairs. The bill would have also made that sort of pro forma throughout the state. In most Illinois communities over a certain size, there's what's called home rule that lets you opt in and out of things like this. Smaller communities like Prospect Heights don't have that authority. Both of these provisions had a home rule exclusion, so they would have been statewide. So any neighborhood that was single-family housing zone could go all the way up to this sort of cottage cluster or 8-unit kind of arrangement. A few other things that it did that were ministerial but are worth knowing about. It tried to revise parking caps, right? How many parking spaces you were allowed to require in conjunction with housing. It looked to revise timelines for inspections. Anybody here waited too long for an inspection? Yes? So they tried to set up a system where if it took longer than 15 or 30 days for residential or commercial, you would have the option to opt into a private third-party review kind of system. There were some other components of this that had to do with impact fees for new buildings and staircases in buildings, so sort of a wide-ranging mix of things. It was a lot, and we heard that right away. We heard it from our villages, we heard it from a lot of neighborhood associations. The important thing to know about any bill is that any bill you file is a first offer. Very important to know. And any bill can be filed. There are not guardrails around what is filed as a bill. One of my favorite jokes to tell people is if you wanted to tomorrow, you could file a bill that said you mandated purple pants on Tuesday. There's absolutely no guardrail on what can be filed. So the governor put a really, really big ask on the table. And when we see a really, really big ask, we know it's a really, really big thing to study, but also there's room to negotiate. And so that is the process that's been going on in Springfield for the last several months around bills. We took the feedback from Prospect Heights and from Northbrook and from Arlington Heights and said, you know, what if we scaled this piece a little bit? And what if we changed this timeline a little bit to see if we could get to something that was very real? Even the ADUs, right? The difference between an attached ADU and a detached ADU, I think, is really meaningful. I'm sure most people in this room know somebody who had what was maybe like an unofficial ADU, somebody you knew who maybe like put a little kitchenette in the basement and had a relative or a family member or a kid out of college who was living down there, but maybe without all the things the fire code would ideally have for a basement unit, right? So I think there is and should be a robust conversation, especially around attached ADUs, so that we make sure that the ones that are out there are safe and regulated, right? Those pieces of the conversation were healthy and robust. Because this is such a big project, not surprisingly, much like the various negotiations, we did not reach a compromise this year. And so nothing is final. All of the feedback is still welcome and appreciated. There were other ancillary bills in this area that did make a little bit of progress. We had some for some of the collar counties who wanted more ability to grant land for affordable housing, right? Those are the ones that are based off regional metrics, trying to house people who make a high 70s, $80,000 salary in our communities in this region. There were some other bills that made a little bit of progress on the administrative sides, but the big project is still out there on the table. So our ask to you is to keep giving us that feedback, right? Which pieces of this resonate with you, right? Would it make sense to change those parking guidelines a little bit, right? What are some timelines that we feel like would be reasonable to put as boundaries around how fast these inspections happen? So keep talking to us, keep letting us know what you're thinking about. The budget does continue to invest in affordable housing. A few pieces that the governor really highlighted, $250 million new dollars for that new missing middle housing. Those are those duplexes, right, kind of housing, as well as for affordable housing initiatives, both through our Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity and through IDA, which is the State Housing Authority. Also dollars for infrastructure grants related to the same. Programs like Opening Doors and Smart Buy that help people put together that first down payment they need for their first home. So all of those things continue to move, but as is appropriate for a big project like this, they move slowly. So no, tomorrow morning your neighbor isn't going to build a cottage cluster next door. But as we think about how to keep our friends, our neighbors, our seniors, our children who are graduating from college in our community, think and talk to us about which of these aspects of this program feel like good ways to scratch to make sure our friends, neighbors, and families can get in our communities. So then we'll hop on to the more granular legislation. For this, I might actually pop up because it's hard for me to crane my neck, and we're all lawyers, so we want to stand a little bit with their PowerPoint. These are the short-term projects, right? Mary Beth and I both had some that we're excited to say are on their way to the governor's desk this year. One that was one that was signed just yesterday. But these are the 5 projects that I'm really excited to have taken to fruition from filing back in January to on their way to the governor's desk right now. They're in a couple of buckets. Healthcare, which is something a lot of you called out today, is definitely one of them. Also sort of consumer protections, right? So the top line one is auto insurance, something called a right to appraisal. For those of you who have met before, I've worked in this space before. I've worked to try and help families who had their cars totaled. This work is an extension of that. Has anybody ever been in a situation where their car was damaged or their car was in an accident or it was in fact totaled and they had a disagreement about the cost of the repair or the value of your vehicle? Has that come up for anybody in the room? Yeah, I see a few people have this happen. We did too, our family too. There is a national kind of best practice called the right to appraisal, which if the value of the repair or the value of the total is big enough, it pays to invest a little bit of money in having neutral appraisers take a look at the situation. And what we were seeing was big players like State Farm quietly seeking that right out of your insurance contract. Like these are big, long contracts of adhesion. People aren't reading them, and rights shouldn't be subtracted from them in the dead of night. I want to hat check the Alliance of Automotive Repair Shops, who was the industry association who really lifted this up, right? As they were seeing those people from the insurance company come in and say to their customers, no, your car is only worth this. a few of them with these big players didn't have this right anymore. So once this bill kicks in next summer, that right will automatically and by right be in all of your contracts. Know that you have it. Think about it when you've got a meaningful difference and a formulated kind of difference in any of those values. This is available to you as a way to make sure you're getting fair value without having to go to court. The long-acting injectables pilot is a really interesting subject. This one deals with both substance abuse disorders and corrections facilities. We each have committee assignments. I'm the vice chair of the committee that deals with mental health and addiction issues. And so it's a real concern to me that we are doing our very best to help people who are suffering from drug use. And one of the most effective treatments right now is a long-acting injectable medication. Are people familiar with this? Have you heard about this before? Right, and so as opposed to taking a medication every day that you have to sit and dissolve under the tongue, a once monthly shot can have a much higher compliance rate and a much higher success rate. Right now, people who are in the state's custody in our Department of Corrections, nearly a third of them have some level of substance abuse disorder. And we know from studying other states that if you can help people who are on their way to return to society by getting them these medications in just those last couple of months, we wildly multiply their success rate of staying sober in the community. Kentucky, which has done the biggest and longest pilot, saved $5 for every dollar they spent on this. So Illinois is working right now to allocate dollars from our opioid settlement relief funds to this program to help make sure people are safe and successful and can be and stay sober in the community. I am super proud to share that this was a bipartisan bill, that we had both Republicans and Democrats from every corner of the state. Some of our most fiscally and policy conservative members join me because we see so much hope and promise for people to have successful lives if they can access these life-saving medications. The middle two, both kind of solid healthcare bills. Glucagon is the emergency medication that is used for a type 1 diabetic emergency. Somebody's going to shock from low blood sugar. There are right now lots of students in our schools who have prescriptions for this, but also staff and faculty and guests in the building. We do allow our schools to carry for certain medications extra stock in the building, things like asthma inhalers and EpiPens. We're going to allow that now for glucagon too, so that there won't be situations where perhaps there's an expired prescription or a guest in the building who needs emergency medication faster than the paramedics can get there. So if anybody here like me has ever given a glucagon injection, this is a miraculous life-saving medication that will be more available now in our schools. Vaccine access for all ages. This was done in partnership with the hospitals and insurance associations. We had a state standard that had hospitals encouraging but not requiring flu and pneumonia vaccines for any of their patients aged 60 and older. But best practice tells us that for some communities, you really should be getting that vaccine under 60 years of age. In particular, the National Black Caucus of Legislators has been backing this. We are losing too many people in their 50s that could be saved by a flu vaccine or a pneumonia vaccine. So if you happen to find yourself or a family member in the hospital right now, they will go out of their way. Now, regardless of age, if you have any risk factors at all, to make that offer, to make that available to you. So thank you to all the healthcare partners who work to make that better for people. The last one is diaper labeling. And I wanted to talk about this one because it comes from community stories like the ones that come out of these town halls. We had somebody who reached out to us. They had been reading a parenting magazine. They had learned that in the state of New York, for the very first time, they had started putting ingredient labels on diapers, both diapers for adults and seniors and also for children. And it made an awful lot of sense. We put labels on all of our foods, we put labels on all of our clothes, and yet diapers, which come from the most sensitive areas, were not having this information. And so those with allergies and skin sensitivities were having reactions that could have been avoided or prevented if they had known what materials were going into these products. So a very simple, safe, consumer-friendly piece of legislation that we spotted because of Mom read a magazine and gave a call. So it can be as simple as that. A lot of our projects come out of these community stories. If you shared one on a note card, great. If there's one you want to share offline tonight or another night, please reach out. Mary Beth and I are always happy to take those stories and turn them into legislation. Thanks, Monica.
Of course. So I know
we're going to do the quick long ones,
yep.
Right? Big projects. These ones I will do faster. We're not going to give them as much time as we gave the Bears and we gave Bill, but to know the things that we're working on that are long run on the horizon. We're in the library. Who's an ebook fan? Anybody else here love to read the ebooks? I'm the House Chief Sponsor of the Illinois Library Association's bill to help attack coercive ebook pricing. You may be surprised to find out that the library can buy the latest Stephen King hardcover for about the same that you and I could on Amazon today. But if they want that same thing as an ebook or as an audiobook, they're paying anywhere from 4 to 7 times the price for that same product. And they have expiration dates, whether it's 1 year or 2 year, or an amount of checkouts, like 26 checkouts or 54 checkouts. We are getting price gouged. These are taxpayer dollars going to these books. We are looking to make Illinois one of the first states in the nation to band together with a national coalition that are going to fight the publishers on this. This is about coercive pricing, and we can say no to that with our government contracting dollars. Community college baccalaureates, this is a project decades in the making. We want to make Illinois the 25th state in the nation to allow certain four-year degrees in high-need workforce areas, things like early childhood education and nursing, available to our students who want to continue on right here at Harper and Oakton and CLC. We know this works in the communities that do it because our community colleges know how to partner with employers to make that pipeline happen. We will continue to fight for this one. It is a huge bipartisan list of sponsors, again, every corner of the state, including the minority leader in the House and people from every part of the state on the Democratic caucus. Facilities fees, another long-run project. Anybody seen one of these pop up on a healthcare bill? You got your doctor bill and you got a facility fee slapped on there. These are sneaking into bills all over the state. We're looking to mirror states like Connecticut and Indiana who have started to put guardrails around that. If you're in the hospital, great, pay hospital overhead. If you're not, let's not. So that's what that project is about. In Connecticut, we've seen it bring down healthcare costs 7% for people who are taking out of hospital patient care. Affordable housing plans, this is a cousin to the BUILD project. Most of the communities that are in both of our districts are already part of the state's affordable housing planning program. If you have 10% or less affordable housing, you make a plan and then you work towards those goals, doing things like having 15% of the units in a new big development include affordable rates, again, for that target of high $70,000 to $80,000 incomes. This will expand people making those plans to the suburbs that were between 10% and 25%. You may be shocked to find out pool 1 from 0 to 10 is only 45 communities, and that next pool is only 45 communities. We're only talking about 7% of the state that isn't at 25% already. And so we use these plans to help people strategically think about how to catch up and hit that margin. And the final one is Lake Michigan Regional Water Planning. Some of you may have heard that there is a proposal right now for the DuPage Water Commission to locate not far from here and pipe water out to DuPage. That kicked off a really big discussion about how we regulate our water, how and where and why, right? There is no reason that a homeowner in this part of Cook County, or especially in southern Cook County, should be paying more for a gallon of Lake Michigan drinking water than a customer in DuPage or a business or data center out in the collar counties. And so this is a regional task force that's being put together with the cooperation of both the Metropolitan Planning Council and the governor's deputy governor in this space, as we figure out how to make a long-range plan for water, just like we did for transit. So you can see the difference between the this year wins and the big picture projects. But all things that come out of and resonate with conversations we've had in the community, and let us know what more you want us to build into these lists for next year.
Thank you. I will move on. I will move on to the next slide. I will not read it through it. Those are just some of the events that are happening in District 54 and 57. This slide will be on for you guys for a while to take a look at it, take pictures, and we will move on to questions, and Commissioner Britton will be reading the questions.
All right. Okay, so I got some good ones. I hope you guys are ready. I'm going to start with our favorite subject, which is property taxes. Property taxes are overwhelming homeowners in our collective district, and that's certainly true. Will you support sponsored legislation that places a cap on the percentage of home value relative to the property tax bill, or legislation that places limits on the property taxes increase year over year? Mary Beth, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so this is a sticky one. I'm also on the property tax working group, and I think there's a lot of times some confusion between your property tax assessment and your property tax bill. Your assessed value of your home only helps determine your share of the overall property tax, right? Which is set by the levies. And those are the government agencies and the amount of money that they say they need in order to operate. So if your property assessment goes up 300%, and all of your neighbors go up by 300%, but the levy stays the same, the amount of property tax that you pay will stay the same. Your share will not change. It changes for outliers, so if you go up by 300% and no one else in your community does, that's an outlier. You are looking at potentially having to pay more of your share of the property tax levy, and you should talk to somebody about that, because it sounds like an anomaly and something like, I don't know, an error that would need to be fixed. There are very few outliers like that. I think also historically, the legislatures have tried to do caps like that on the ability of municipalities and other local governments to tax. How many of you are familiar with PTEL? Anyone? PTEL, lovers of PTEL? That says that certain government entities can't increase their property tax levy more than 5% or CPI, right? It creates a perverse incentive, essentially, to tax as much as they can, because if they don't in 1 year, they do run the risk of not being able to get the funds when they need it. And what we want governments to do is levy what they need at the right time, right? So we don't want to encourage people to always go up to 5% or always go to 4.5% or whatever we determine is some arbitrary level. But we do need to talk about the way our tax system works, and that includes everything, right? So your municipalities really get their operating dollars from property taxes and sales taxes, right? Your school districts are really looking at property taxes. That, to me, is not a system that totally works. It does mean that you are bearing the brunt of inflation as those costs go up. So do the tax levies, potentially, as they have to make maintenance repairs to their buildings, as they have to build new buildings. That money all has to come from somewhere. And you don't necessarily want the exact same building that was built in 1968 to try and do all of the things that we needed to do in 2026 or 2027. The needs change, right? Parts no longer exist to make repairs to parts of those buildings. So I think we do have to have very serious conversations about how we can fix our taxing system overall, how we can get more stability and consistency for our taxing bodies that we rely on to provide the services that we want. We want good schools, we want police departments that respond quickly, we want good sidewalks and lighting, and we want our, sewer systems to not break. Those things all have to be paid for. How can we do those things in a way that isn't also running people out of the very communities that we want you to stay in? Those things matter, and I think it's a much longer conversation. So being able to say, yes, I would support a bill that puts a complete limit, we have seen it not work, bless you. We have seen it not work. We are feeling it not work right now. I don't think we should rush into following a bad idea with a similar bad idea. I think that we need to look for better ideas of how to do things.
In the bucket of better ideas, I'm a big proponent of consolidation, which is another one of those sometimes third rail kind of issues down in Springfield. But I think one that we absolutely need to tackle, right? And much like Mary Beth was saying, one component of property taxes is accuracy, making sure your home is properly valued and not getting help from your township assessor or from the county assessor or the board of review. The other component is levy reduction. How do we take a look at all of these different levying bodies and find the greatest efficiencies of scale? In the 3 years I've been down there, I have run 3.5 bills in this space. getting rid of old antiquated entities like township school boards of trustees. We're working now on removing regional boards of trustees. We are upping the incentives and grant payments involved in school district consolidations, and we're trying to focus harder on metrics and data. The hardest part of a consolidation is getting community buy-in to do a referendum. Has anybody been part of one of these referendums before? They're challenging, right? And so the issue is how to help the boards and the communities identify the win-win situations, right? If you have two neighboring school districts, and those school districts have the same effective tax rate, and they have the same or similar funding percentages, or dollars per pupil, those kinds of numbers, right? Everything is a win. There's no this side or that side of the tracks, it's just a win. And the reality is there are dozens of parents like this in the state that exist who are ready for school boards based on those metrics. And it's before we can start to look at what metrics might look like for park districts or library districts to see where we can strip out administrative duplication and make these kinds of combinations. So that's where I see the most levers available to us as communities, where we have the most control. Is if we start to lean into that good data, and as a state, it's our job to lift up that good data, incentivize, provide grants to structure around, and so that's where a lot of our time and energy is hopefully going to be next year on this.
And there was a follow-up question directed to me, so I guess I'll answer
Love it.
I know. Asking whether I can basically tell the assessor to do something about how he assesses property. The answer is no, I can't. He is a separately elected official. I set his budget, but I do not tell him what to do. But for commercial properties in particular, you can. I mean, if it's a corporation, you have to have a lawyer, and that may be changing that soon. But the board review is the next step. This is the Byzantine nature of our property tax system. Luckily, I don't work in Springfield, so they get to deal with this because this is all state statute. But it is not a very easily navigated process, including for lawyers like us. That's why I hire somebody to do it. So, I mean, yes, there has to be change. It has to be, I think, universal within the systems. There are a lot of entrenched interests that don't want to change a lot of things, and that's what causes a lot of problems, not surprisingly, in the politics that we live in. And I'll give one last push. If we had a graduated income tax, it would be a lot easier to fund our schools and to be fair on everything, but a lot of rich people decided that they were going to lobby against it, and I'm not a big fan of the fact that we have a flat tax, because that causes an enormous amount of problems within this city. Okay, and I'll get off my soapbox. Okay, sorry. Got a lot of questions about ICE activity in our neighborhoods and what the state and local coordination is on how we're responding to what has been, in my experience, an uptick in our area, particularly in our courthouses, of ICE activity and Border Patrol folks grabbing people off the street. So, Tracy, do you want to start with that one?
I can start. There has been a substantial amount of collaboration. That's exactly the right word to use. We have all been together and in different combinations in meetings with villages, nonprofits, police and public safety teams, residents who've been impacted or their neighbors, to try and walk through this scary new world we're living in, right? This is very new. We've never seen this kind of level of activity. We've never seen it executed by people who were this new to the field, right? Like these are not long-standing trained officers like we have in our local departments. Some of the communities that are facing this challenge have small departments. This isn't like CPD where there are fleets and fleets of officers, right? We're looking at teams that are sometimes 4, 6 officers. Yeah, exactly, who are trying to juggle this influx. So we are doing everything that we can to coordinate across these different units of government in combination with neighbors, neighborhood associations, and local nonprofits. We are and will continue to make referrals to both the Attorney General, the state's attorneys, and again, we've got lawyers here, litigation nonprofits, as we see situations where community members need to have their rights actively fought for. There is more that we can do to deal with this new onslaught. I want to in particular thank and have to the Commissioner and the County Sheriff's team, which has upped the array of trainings that are available and made those available to any police departments in the area that need them, their specialized training, tools, etc. That are available as we try and expand best practices, right? Like de-escalation and the different ways in which we can try and mitigate these circumstances, right? Thank you to everybody who's volunteered. Thank you to everybody who's helped both sort of on the front lines with what's happening, but also behind the scenes. There are probably people in here who've up their, donations to food pantries, or helped drop off supplies for school children, or helped stand at bus stops to make sure people can get, safely on their way to school or on their way to work. Everything everybody's doing at every level of disability matters, is noticed, is felt by the neighbors in our community who most need the support. You want to go on?
I was going to say, and I think too, we passed some legislation, well, in 2017, we passed the Trust Act. It was a bipartisan effort. And the gist of it, the overall gist of it is your local police departments that are paid for with your local dollars are not another arm of the federal government. So they will not do enforcement. They will not hold your local jails or whatever. They will not hold people longer than is legally necessary. If someone is, facing some type of incarceration, they won't get held longer than they are supposed to be held, just so that the federal government can come and pick them up. The federal government has its own budget. It has its own people. They can do their own work. I think one area that does get confusing for community and for officers alike is when a situation is ongoing, how far can our local departments go in intervening and asking questions, right? So it is important to know whether a warrant exists. It is important to get as much information as you can get about the person making the arrest, the person who is being taken. When you see abuses, that is going to be a big deal in order for a later lawsuit or to get the Attorney General involved. And I think especially with our much smaller departments, they may not have the human power to be able to do everything in the right way. But I think the training is a big piece of it, and everybody being able to have those open conversations about what can we do better, what can we do to de-escalate situations and not make them worse, I think is critically important, in part because I think we spend a lot of time, have spent historically a lot of time building up trust in our communities and making sure that our departments are they are community-centered, and that trust can be lost really quickly. One incident can wipe out years and years of work of community building, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything we can to try and stop that from happening.
And so I see we have somebody from the Ohio Center who obviously has been dealing with this issue on the ground recently, including in Prospect Heights. I can tell you that the mayor and I met this week, and we decided that I think it's time for a refresher course with everybody. I do think that our police departments do very well, but I think that there's always a better way to go. And I think some of the things I've seen, I think we could do better, including by the sheriff's office, by the way. And so the sheriff and I are going to, probably 14 municipalities are going to do a Zoom with their chiefs of police. And I had complete buy-in with our municipal governments. They're all going to help me in this to go through what we can and cannot do. But I think it's important for us to understand one important thing. The sheriff's office and local police departments basically cannot arrest ICE agents. Now, if they're doing something really bad, like torturing somebody in the middle of Camp McDonald Road, I think we probably could do something about that. Short of that, they literally have no authority to do anything to a federal officer. It's called preemption, and that's the supremacy clause in the Constitution. It is unfortunate, but it is the system we have, and to put that on our local police departments and our sheriff, I don't think it's fair. At the same time, we're not going to cooperate with them, and we're going to continue to protect everyone we can within the bounds of the law, including the right to film, the right to protest, and everything else that goes with that. So we're going to do that part as well. This is an adjunct question that was actually more related to me. Somebody was asking about flop cameras, the license plate readers. That goes to the sheriff's office. the Cook County Sheriff's Office. I just voted to renew that contract because they provided a very lengthy discussion, the Sheriff's Office, as to how we do not share any of that information with ICE. Every municipality, and the village manager can back me up on this, signs a document that says they will not submit that to ICE. It is a criminal penalty if you do, and we will immediately eliminate your ability to access it. But if your kid is kidnapped from the local school, and we can find that person using a license plate reader, which only reads the license plates, it doesn't read the facial recognition, and save that child, I'm going to support that. And that's what we're going to do. But we're not sharing that stuff with the federal government. Fair? All right. And we're going to take questions later on. And you can write one down.
One is later. There's 15 minutes left.
I understand.
One is later.
I'm going to ask one more. I'm going to do one more question that I have submitted on the cards, and then we'll see if we have time for one from the audience. Does that sound good to you guys? And this is an AI question, and it's a combination of A and B, which is data centers. Obviously, are a big question mark because I don't know if everybody else has seen their electric bill go up, but mine has. And the location, the heat signatures, the use of water, all of that stuff. So where are we? I know there was some talk that the governor was doing something. It didn't end up passing, did it? Well, you tell me what happened because I can't remember.
So it's almost a question in two parts,
Okay.
right?
Right.
So first, the governor announced that he wanted, in his State of the State address in February, he announced that he wanted to pause an incentive, tax incentive that existed for data centers. He wanted to pause that while we figured out how to manage these. I think one of the things that wasn't super well known was that the only labor protections for construction of data centers was through that incentive. So when folks were getting a prevailing wage to help build, et cetera, that came as a result of that incentive. So our friends in labor were really nervous about losing these construction jobs to Indiana or Wisconsin where those protections wouldn't exist. And I think the other thing that comes up all the time is when a data center gets built in Indiana or Wisconsin, it is still impacting our electricity because they share grids with us. It is still impacting our water, and we have no way to regulate them in any way. And so we get none of the good, but we do get all of the bad still. So I think where we are right now is looking at really the Power Act. I think the governor has said what he wants to see as a framework for what responsible data center regulation could look like, so that if we are going to have to live with data centers, because they are going to go somewhere, people will not stop wanting these data centers because we want to do AI and we want to save all of the AI in the friggin' cloud because we're gluttons for punishment, but they're coming, they exist, they have to go somewhere. We want those things to be controlled. We want to make smart use of water. Our water reclamation districts create an opportunity for using some of the gray water that they have cleaned. There's no reason that a data center should be pulling from Lake Michigan all of our good water that is potable water to cool what they have. We also need to be mindful about the sound that they make and making sure that they are bringing their own energy supply into the grid. So how do we go about getting all of that without just being at the whims of Indiana or Wisconsin or wherever? That's what we're working through right now. Shortly after session, the governor did sign an executive order which paused the tax incentive on data centers to give everybody time to work through legislation of data centers.
And I was peeking at my notes because there's some of the pre-submitted questions I saw that we didn't get to yet, so I'm
Yeah.
just making sure we didn't miss any.
Sure. But you want to weigh in on any of the AI? stuff?
No, I mean, the big AI bill that we did pass, did you do the one we did pass? No. We did do the one, our colleague Van Divich and Senator Andy Arnold did that has to do with sort of catastrophic AI mistakes. Horrifying as this is, there have already been scenarios where we've seen things like injuries, deaths, suicides that were in connection with information garnered from AI. And so we did pass a significant piece of legislation that will create accountability and guardrails around these really serious incidents that are happening with AI, expected to be the first of many as we kind of go down the process of using this working group to find out how to tangle with this. And of course, given changes in the federal government next year, we may see some of this happen in a more blanket instead of piecemeal fashion at the federal level, which would also be excellent.
All right, here's one of the other pre-submitted questions. This is from someone who uses a wheelchair.
That was
Yeah, I figured it was.
Yeah.
The transportation accessibility issues remain very significant throughout the county and the state. For people with disabilities, what specific actions are being taken at the state level to improve accessible transportation, healthcare access, and independent living opportunities for Illinois residents with disabilities? Tracy, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of notes about this one. Front of mind for me because it does some of this work. Excuse me. Cross to the Mental Health and Addiction Committee. Transit, which Mary Beth was on the committee, and she can talk more about, but one real visible change there was that the new NETA board and many of the underlying boards will, by mandate, have at least one board member who is either an individual with a disability or someone with demonstrated advocacy experience in this field. Community disproportionately uses public transit, and it is essential that those voices be there at the board tables when these decisions are being made. Independent living, this was one of the other SILA kind of sibling bills to what was happening in the build and affordable housing space. This one did not cross the finish line yet, but I encourage people who are real focused on independent living to keep their eye on this. When SILA arrangements are happening in the community, like any other arrangement that has multiple unrelated people in the home, we still have antiquated laws on the books, which once known as brothel laws, I kid you not, that were meant to prevent unrelated people from living in homes. It's more commonly used now in areas where there's student housing. They might use it to keep more than 4 unrelated Northwestern students or Lake Forest College students from moving into a home in your neighborhood. There is specific legislation out there run now by our colleague Suzanne Ness, which would flatly across the state, including for home rule communities, end the ability to use those sorts of unrelated persons rules to prevent SILAs. I'll share a little bit more that I think we should do even more than SILAs. I'd like to see this for other forms of supportive housing. We have people living in group settings for recovery, not just from substance abuse, but also for things like eating disorders and mental health conditions. And we should welcome these kinds of ADA adjacent Fair Housing Act arrangements, which frankly already are mandated by the FHA, that get fought out at the local government level. So we want to see more independent living facilities and more group housing that is where these really important healthcare concerns. That's good for both the disability community and adjacent communities. On the healthcare side, Mary Beth highlighted really well earlier just what a big impact we're looking at for Medicaid losses. That's where the state is putting its time and energy to triage there. We are most worried about this Medicaid expansion population. Those are the people who are, of majority age, but not 54, right, without children, who are in this healthcare population right now, and a big block of them are people who are in the process of qualifying for disability. So doing everything we can, sort of change the minds at the federal level to get these people back into the coverage pipeline, but triage to keep their care in place till they get to disability as sort of the backup plan. That's where I think most of our healthcare access energy is going. I want to shout out, to whoever was asking the question in the room, key advocacy partners for us in this work, places like the ARC, Access Living, Equip for Equality. These are all places if your family is facing challenges related to access to healthcare or transit or living spaces that advocate, most of them free of charge and referrals that are low or no cost. They're tremendous champions in Springfield, so connect with us and connect with them too, because those are some of the biggest resources we have. Yeah.
All right, and there was a very specific
We could
question.
actually talk about ADA stuff for a second.
Do you want to address that?
Just for a very quick second. You mentioned earlier about the diaper example not having the labels on there. I want to bring a true story here.
You know what? Can we get back to that after we finish the questions?
We're going to do a personal story and
Well,
I'll talk to you after, so we
Yeah, this is,
Okay, give me the opportunity.
we'll stay.
Fine.
Yeah.
We'll stay.
Okay, thank you.
Part of the reason you do the card is to keep your personal stuff.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna quiz you.
Okay.
You ready?
We love a quiz.
House Bill 4594. By the way, I don't know a single number.
I looked it up.
Okay,
I
I don't know a
have
single
some-
number of
I have not
anything
seen
I've
that.
ever had.
So we have somebody who works in the museum committee in the house.
Yes.
It's you,
Which
okay.
removes requirements
So-
for museums to
Yes.
raise matching funds for state grants.
Exactly, so this
Okay.
bill belongs to Representative Kim Dubuc-Clay, and this is why the pre-questions are the best, because even if it's not ours, it gives us some time to get to the update. So here is the full update on this bill, right, that would change sort of the matching dollars requirements for museums who are looking for grant funds. So Rep. Dubuc-Clay shares that like many worthwhile proposals, this particular bill did not get to the finish line, not because there was any significant opposition, which is important, right? This is not about somebody who is fighting against it, but mostly because of the realities of what the legislators in the process were facing this year. The budget negotiations, competing priorities, and the crowded calendar meant there wasn't enough time to build momentum. Momentum can still be built. The bill would have made future state capital funding more accessible for public museums, especially the smaller institutions that often face challenges securing local or private matching funds required under the current law. And while it didn't move forward, it has sparked important conversation about strengthening Illinois' cultural infrastructure and ensuring museums of every size have fair and equitable access to state investment. So this is from the horse's mouth of the chief house sponsor. We can connect after if you want to talk more about Dubuc-Clay. It's in the Probes committee, so it wasn't one that was going to move on its own, but we can keep pushing on this one because it sounds like the sponsor still thinks it's live.
All right, that was a good museum question. I like that one.
Yeah.
Somebody asked about questions about repair of Camp McDonald Road and who's responsible for that. You're looking at them. I am responsible for that. We've committed about $150,000 for additional work on Camp McDonald, and we do a lot with the village or the city actually. So that's me. We can talk about that one afterwards as well. Since we talked about property taxes, we might as well talk about the other gorilla in the room, which is the pensions. At least you're not the city of Chicago, so you're better off than that. But what is the plan to fully fund all of our pensions, including the 600 different entities that participate in the state's pension liability?
Stick to the ground. No more holidays. Never a holiday. We will not vote for a holiday.
All right.
We have worked so hard to drive down the percentage of the state budget that goes to pension funds. We have to stay the course there, right? That is the light at the end of the tunnel that gets us to a place where more of those dollars can go to the things we need most, predominantly human services. That only gets accomplished if we stay the course there. That doesn't mean that the pensions need to stay identical to how they are, right? They can be fine-tuned internally to make sure that our teachers and our first responders and our nurses in the public hospitals have the protections they need, but while staying on that ramp that will eventually get us to a place where it can be a much more reasonable portion of our state budget. So that's the quick and dirty. Yeah.
The Edgar ramp?
No, there's different versions of this, but the one that JD has us on it right now, Governor Pritzker has us on the plan, and it would hit when's the 20, I want to say 34.
20, no.
There are things that
There
are,
are different parts of it.
yeah, there are things that for legislators from this neck of the woods are no-goes. They start mentioning the pension holidays, it's a no-go. They start messing with not putting the money in the equitable funding formula for K-12 schools, it's a no-go, right? There are some things that for legislators from our corner of the world are just red flags.
What about tier two?
Which one, what?
Tier two.
Tier
Changes
two.
to tier two.
It's not moving right now. The last proposal had a unique funding source so that it wouldn't impact the rate. And I think that's the only way that they can get those
Not
funds. We
limited.
have to have a funding source for it. It cannot affect the rate. We've got to get to a place where it's a lower percentage. Has to happen.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Did we get all of the note cards?
We got all the
All
note
right,
cards.
so I can see there's some people who want to have kind of one-on-one conversations so that we don't like chairperson information with the whole room. Those are also important. We can hang out and do that. Thank you all for being here tonight to give up your weekday evening to come in, hear an overview, talk subjects. Thank you for sending the questions in advance. I'm sure you guys have seen this tonight. There's actual data behind this. We can get so much more done by doing it this way, getting as much as we can and aggregating this. So thank you to Scott, and hats off to our moderator.
By the way, last point from me, the Bears are also, Arlington Park is also in my district. And
That's right.
so, I know Mary Beth has been doing yeoman's service and trying to get this done. I support them coming to Arlington Heights if we can make it happen without spending enormous amounts of public funds we don't have. So we're going to keep working on it, and I'm very glad we have somebody like these guys helping us in Springfield. So again, thank you for our